Hi, my name is Pat Iyer. This is Legal Nurse Podcast, and I have the pleasure of bringing to you Amy Puls, who I have met and talked with about how she grew her LNC business using a tool that is available to you right now without any extra expense in your life and often overlooked as a way to connect with potential clients. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pat. It's great to be here. I'm really privileged that you've asked me to be here.
We are looking forward to what you have to say. To introduce you to our listener, you've been a nurse for 24 years. You're currently working as an advanced practice nurse practitioner in family medicine, and you have experience both in pediatric and critical care, pre-hospital EMS and air medical, which I had to think about. Oh, that means you were a flight nurse.
Right.
And did you go up in helicopters with patients?
Yes, we did helicopter. Yep.
I did a podcast with a guy named Robert Harris, who is a flight nurse, and we talked about that space, that really tiny space that's available for equipment and the patient and the staff, and how you have to be always thinking about, do you have what you need and how you need to respond if the patient's condition deteriorates in the middle of a flight.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. If you're claustrophobic, it's not the place for you. But it's interesting because in those small spaces, it's interesting how you can fit pretty much everything you need from either an ER or an ICU in that really tiny area. But then you go to a hospital and it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're currently grounded on the ground in family medicine.
Yes, finally grounded.
At some point, it sounds like you heard about legal nurse consulting and wanted to give it a try. Tell our listener what that was like.
Yeah, so, I think like a lot of people, when you hear about legal nursing, you really don't know what that entails. And that was exactly how it happened with me. I'd heard about it, but didn't really know what was all involved. Luckily, I had a family member who was in the legal field, and she reached out to me and kind of asked me, hey, would you want to be an expert witness? And of course, I had no idea really what that meant. So I thought, okay, I'll try it. And it just kind of took off. I gave her my CV upon her request, and she passed it along to some of her attorney friends. And lo and behold, about a week later, I got a phone call from an attorney asking me to review a case. And that was really, I was just kind of thrown into the wolves. And it was unfortunate at the time because I really, I made a lot of mistakes. It was those bad mistakes that you make when you don't know what you're doing. But I was also lucky because he was very, very patient with me and gave me a chance and kind of showed me the ropes of what an attorney wanted from a legal nurse, from the expert witness part of it. That was the expert part. Luckily, I didn't have to testify at that point, but I did a couple cases for him. And then, I don't know, for about another 2 years, I really didn't do anything more with it. I just kind of left it there. And all of a sudden COVID hit and my NP practice took a hit, which I think a lot of, small rural clinics have had problems with COVID, just having to shut down their clinics and whatnot. But my clinic shut down to part-time, so I needed something to fill the gap. So I thought, okay, I'm going to dig my heels in. And I did. And it's been great. Ever since then, I've been doing part-time legal nursing and part-time NP.
Let me pull back a few minutes with what you said, because I know our listeners going to be thinking, what happened to Amy with that first case? What were the things that our listener, who is an expert witness, should know about? Tell us about the kinds of traps that were unsuspecting existed in that first case.
So that first case, obviously it was it was interesting to me because I hadn't really read medical chart from that standpoint. As nurses, we read medical charts all the time, but when you read it from the point of a legal nurse consultant or an expert witness, I learned that you really have to obviously have a very unbiased opinion, and you have to see it from both sides, whether you're working for the defense or the plaintiff. For instance, if you're working for defense, you have to also read it from a plaintiff side, because the defense attorney, they're hiring you as the expert. They don't want to have unexpected topics that come up from the plaintiff that you as the expert maybe didn't see and didn't share with them. So your job as the expert is to really prepare them from both sides, but also give them your expert opinion on how the defense is going to prevail in that case. So that was eye-opening for me, honestly. And I didn't do that at first. And I did make a lot of mistakes. And he, like I said, was very patient with me, but was also very honest with me. Put me in my place, which was good. And if he hadn't done that, I wouldn't have learned that you really do have to go into it with an open mind and look at it from both sides. Whether you agree with their part of the case or not, you have to tell them why you disagree or why you agree, and what potentially could happen from, the opposing counsel or the opposing expert, what they could bring up with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Because you're not hired as an advocate, you're hired as an expert, and attorneys hate surprises.
Yeah, I learned that. Yeah.
So after that first experience, and you processed what happened and thought about what you would do differently the next time, you had a hiatus for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then saw the opportunity as your NP hours were cut back. And I assumed that you couldn't do virtual appointments at that perspective at that facility. Mm-hmm. You needed to be able to see people in person.
Correct. We did a few virtual, but not all diagnoses or patient complaints should or can be seen via virtual. You have to have those hands-on assessments. So yeah, there was very few virtual visits that I was able to do. Even though I wanted to, I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now you're faced with a gap in income. Your hours have been cut back. You've got a hand between your shoulder blades and a little voice whispering in your ear that says, Amy, remember those attorneys? Yeah. How did you go from nothing to being able to build a part-time income?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is I had to have intention. I had to know that as a nurse practitioner and as a nurse, that wasn't my only experience that I had to offer. So because I'd had that small amount of experience with legal nursing, that's what made me really fall back on that. And when that happened, I had to make that intention that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to dig my heels in and get back into legal nursing. But to do that, I was starting out alone, right? You feel when you're a new business owner or a new business startup, you feel very isolated almost. So I had to learn who to reach out to. I reached out to many, many legal nurses and really locked arms with them and just absorbed all of the information they could give me. I went on Facebook. I found a couple different Facebook groups for specifically legal nurses, and that was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Got some really, really good mentors that way. Purchased some books, purchased some of your books, so thank you. And I just dug in. So that's the biggest thing, is you have to go into it with intention and knowing that this is your goal. I don't have another option at that point. This was what else I knew that I could do, and I knew that I could have success. I just had to get to that point of getting the attorney clients to have success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. By connecting with the nurses, did you get subcontracting jobs? Did you get leads for cases? More knowledge? And
Yeah,
what was the benefit?
The hugest benefit that I had was mainly the knowledge and learning how to market myself. You know, as nurses, like I said before, we know how to read medical records. We know how to chart in medical records, but we don't know how to market. We're not marketers. And that was the biggest thing that I learned. So when I reached out to these other legal nurses, it was not so much on how to read a medical chart. It was, how do I market myself to get out there, to put myself in front of attorneys so that they know what I have to offer them? So that was really what I got. I didn't have any subcontracting gigs at that time. It was marketing. Once I started marketing, I had attorneys reaching out to me specifically for expert witness services. I didn't have really any behind the scenes at that point. I found that, especially as a nurse practitioner, attorneys want you for your expert witness abilities. So that was how I started, the marketing and then doing expert witness work. Now I am doing more subcontracting behind the scenes. And maybe at some point, as in my legal nursing business specifically, I will do behind the scenes. But right now it's virtually mostly, I would say 80% expert witness, and the extra 20 would be behind the scenes.
And take us through the process that you used in marketing your services. What tools, what approaches did you use?
Yeah. So you said before about when you, in the introduction, you were saying how you can use LinkedIn with very little money in your pocket and you don't have to spend a lot. And I didn't have that money to spend, so I put it all on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn has been a wonderful vehicle for my business, and I learned through kind of trial and error in reading books and reading articles and reaching out to other LNCs that if you specifically market in a certain way on LinkedIn and reach out to the attorneys that you're trying to market to, you can do your whole business on LinkedIn. And that's really what I did. So I essentially reached out to any and every attorney that I could that had a background specifically in the areas that I was most comfortable in. And that would be medical malpractice, and then some personal injury with my background in trauma nursing with the flight. I had a lot of personal injury interest, and then a little bit of work comp, but I reached out to them, and eventually they just started, I guess, taking the hook. You know, that's really what it was. You just have to plant the seed and eventually they'll reach back to you. And then you get your first job. And after that, it just kind of snowballs because attorneys talk. They talk to each other and they'll pass on your information if they're impressed faster than you can actually reach out to other attorneys.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned reaching out to them, and I know that there are people who hesitate in marketing on LinkedIn because they don't want to be dismissed as sounding very salesy or off target. I've had people, when I've connected with them on LinkedIn, who I know based on their message that they send me that they have no idea what I do. Yeah. One guy who told me that he knew that I was in charge of ordering beds for my hospital. And I thought, what in my profile says that I do that? Would you consider our beds? Well, no, I wouldn't.
I don't want your bed.
How do you structure your message to a potential attorney to attract that individual from into wanting to have a deeper conversation with you?
Yeah, so what I found was that you have to, first of all, know how LinkedIn works. You can do a broad search on LinkedIn, and I'm just going to use medical malpractice as an example because that's really the majority of what I do. You can do a broad search for medical malpractice attorney, and it'll bring up a bunch of them. There's some people that choose just to go through from top to bottom and start connect. And you really can't do that. You have to know exactly who you're reaching out to, where they're from, what state are they in? Do they have specific medical malpractice that they work in? And does it match what you have to offer? Okay, so you have to know your attorney-client audience. And then let's say, as I do that, I find an attorney-client or attorney who potentially could become a client, and I would like to reach out to them. So I will go to their profile, peek through it, make sure it does match with what I have to offer. And I click on the connect, those little buttons there, it says connect. And if they have an option for me to message them, some of them don't, some of them have messaging blocked. But if they do have an opportunity for me to message them, I will just send a quick little message saying something like, hello, Bob, whatever his name is. Hello, Bob, hoping to connect. Have a great week, Amy. That's all I do. I don't spill everything that I have to offer because you have to just get them in first. And if, just like when you said, someone met that to happen with potential attorney clients.
Amy, I'm going to stop you for a minute because you froze for a few seconds and I missed what you said. I can edit this out.
Yeah. Are we on?
Yeah, I'm putting on a little silence. The last thing that I heard was just like what you said, and you were referring to the bed example. So let's start from there.
Okay. So just like what you said with someone reaching out to you asking about purchasing a bed, because that doesn't pertain to you and it's just too much information, you just bypass them. You don't want a potential attorney client to do that to you. So when you reach out, it's just very simple and, hey, Attorney Bob, hoping to connect. Have a great week. Thanks, Amy. And leave it at that. And more often than not, they will accept your connection. At that point, then I circle back around, maybe a week later, maybe a couple days later, and I thank Attorney Bob for his connection. So I reach out to him again and I say, hi, Bob. Thank you for connection. I appreciate it. If you ever need any legal nursing assistance, please feel free to reach out, period. Leave it at that. And again, often, a little bit less often than the first reach out, but they will come back with, thank you, I will keep you in mind. That just opens everything up for you. They haven't closed you down. And so maybe in the future, I might reach back again and say, hey, just touching base, circling back around, hope you're doing well. Can I give you my CV? And honestly, that has probably been the biggest helpful tip that I can give is just circle back around, but don't be pushy and always know what they're looking for so that you know your client. I would say on average, for every 20 attorneys that I have reached out and connected with, I get 2 of them that either request or accept my CV. And that to me is a win.
Do you have a spreadsheet in which you keep track of who you've contacted when and what steps have occurred?
Yeah.
Before we continue with the show, I'd like to share this special announcement with you. Do you feel like one in many in a crowded field? Are you making the most of one of the most effective ways to get the attention of attorneys? We're talking about LinkedIn. Do you know how to best fill out your headline and summary? Are you taking advantage of the best wording for your profile? Does your profile have keywords that will help attorneys find you? Do you know how to most efficiently locate your ideal clients? The LinkedIn Planner for LNCs takes you step by step through the process of how to get attention on LinkedIn, the largest online business network. From how to best describe yourself to how to post high-quality content, the planner is tailored to your needs as a legal nurse consultant, and you'll get so much more. Get your copy instantly through a digital download at this link, http://lnc.tips/LP. That link again is http://lnc.tips/LP. You'll be able to start right away on polishing your LinkedIn profile. Now let's return to the show.
I don't. I have thought about doing that, but I don't, because I found that it's actually easier for me just to go back into my contacts. And LinkedIn is good where it keeps track of who you've messaged. So I can just click back and I can see my old message with them and see when I sent it. And then, if it's been a couple weeks or even a month or something, then I'll repeat my message. So I haven't had to do the spreadsheet.
Now, do you also use LinkedIn for posting content?
I do. The other thing I found, other than reaching out to attorneys to connect, is you have to be present on LinkedIn. If you're not, you give them absolutely no reason to connect with you, because unlike other social media sites, LinkedIn is obviously very professional, and people want to connect with you on a professional and even an intellectual level. So if you want an attorney to connect with you, you have to give them a reason. So oftentimes if I say, my first reach out to them saying, hope to connect, they'll oftentimes go to your site and say, and look to see if you have anything that they're interested in. So if you have really no posts, they're going to bypass you. So I post probably about 3 to 4 times a week on average. Some posts are very short, and it's just either posting about what I have to offer, posting about, some link to an article that I read that has something to do with a medical malpractice case. So for instance, or, whatever's in the news media at the time. Or I will post my blog that I do every week on my actual legal nursing website. I write a blog every Sunday, and every weekend, and I post it on every Sunday, and then I share it on my LinkedIn page. So that when somebody sees it, they have to click on the link and it takes them right to my website. Well, now they have more opportunity to look at my website and see what else I have to offer. So there's always some kind of cross-linking that I have going on, and it always draws the attorneys in. And that's been a huge help for my business.
And then do you use hashtags in your posts to draw attention to key factors?
I do. Hashtags have been around forever, right? On other social media sites, especially Facebook and Instagram and things, even Twitter. But LinkedIn is quite new to hashtags. So I found that not a lot of people really quite understand how hashtags can benefit them in the LinkedIn category. So every time I do a post, I follow it with some sort of hashtag. There's essentially 3 different types of hashtags that you can use, and they're put into categories. One kind of helps you brand yourself, right? So I'll always hashtag Global Nurse Consulting, which is my business, so that if somebody follows Global Nurse Consulting at some point, and I'll ask them to follow Global Nurse Consulting for more great information. If they follow it, they will see every single one of my posts. And then I will also give maybe 2 or 3 other a little bit more broad hashtags that bring in followers of those specific hashtags. So for instance, hashtag attorneys, okay? Not hashtag medical malpractice attorney, because that's quite narrow, but in a broad one. So hashtag attorneys. If you look and do a search on LinkedIn in the search bar, and you search hashtag attorneys or hashtag whatever you're looking for, it'll bring up how many followers of that hashtag there are. So if you then use that specific hashtag in your posts, all the people that follow that hashtag will see your post, even if they're not followers of you. So eventually they will become followers of you, and then you can grow your business that way. That's really been a big help for me. And you can change your hashtags all the time. So, I'll every once in a while, maybe once, twice a month or something, I will go on the search bar and I'll look for different hashtags as to what is trending at the time. It might be hashtag nursing home legal nurse or something. Something might be trending different in one month than it did the previous month. So you can switch up your hashtags like that in order to bring in different attorney clients that fall into the category of what you have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You find that as you look at the results, there's certain topics or certain types of content that get you more response?
Yeah, and this was really surprising to me, honestly. You think when you post certain topics that would be very interesting to, again, we'll use medical malpractice attorney, something with the medical malpractice field, that it would get a lot of hits, and they do. But when I look back, I get more hits from some of my personal posts, which is interesting. So for instance, when it was Daughter's Day, I posted a picture of my daughters, which is very personal, and you don't see it very often on LinkedIn. But when I do that, the comments or the likes skyrockets. So it's interesting how even though it's very professional and intellectual, when you just kind of trickle in a few little personal things in there, it almost like gives you that more human look to your profile, and people really start to see you more on a personal level, which is very appealing, I think, to a lot of professionals. They, especially in this day and age when everything is so digital, and we don't have a lot of personal interaction with people. That's my guess, is that is why a lot of those personal posts really get more hits right now. It might change in the future, but that's been huge.
That's fascinating, because there is some controversy over what is the best content for LinkedIn, and it's not Facebook. So there are some people on LinkedIn, it's my understanding from looking at the timeline, that treat it like Facebook and go off on rants. We have enough rants in our lives on Facebook and otherwise that they tend to get a very negative reaction. And what you're describing is a bit of personal revealing, but not getting into this danger territory that I'm outlining of Stay away from political opinions. Don't make any comments about vaccine mandates.
Right.
Do you know anybody who's ever died from COVID? Those questions that seem to like throw the match into the kindling. You know what I'm talking about? You've seen these kinds of.
Oh, absolutely.
Reactions.
Yeah. And it is fascinating because I just zoom right by those. I don't want to get into that, especially on LinkedIn, but they do get a lot of comments.
Yes. Do you pay for any of the LinkedIn services that are the additional X number of dollars a month?
Yeah. So I haven't. This is a funny story. I never did until recently, and I'll tell you why. So I wanted to use as few dollars as I could to build my business. So I used the random free premium trial offers that LinkedIn sometimes gives, and had been doing great with that. And it's usually, I think, a month, if I'm not mistaken. So during that month, they'll give you unlimited amount of connections. So I just take advantage of that. And I go through and I connect with as many people as I can during that month of free premium. And you can also look on there with the free premium to see who has also viewed your profile, so that you can figure out, okay, is this somebody that I should really connect with? Or are they just trying to sell me a bed, right? But recently I wrote the date down wrong as to when my premium trial ended. And so I got billed for the premium for a whole year. So, that was a mistake on my part. But to be honest, it's been okay because I've made it worth my while and worth the money. I think it's like $50 a month, if I'm not mistaken, which is not something I wanted to spend. But since I made that error, I've just been taking advantage of it, and I make as many contacts as I can, and I use anything and everything that's available on the premium LinkedIn. So I get my money's worth.
Mm-hmm. And I think the final question I have for you, Amy, is what tips would you give other legal nurse consultants who are in the place that you were in? Your hours were cut back. You wanted to build up a practice. You wanted additional sources of income other than your clinical. What can they do today to get started?
So I think the best information I can tell them is reach out to as many other legal nurses as you can and absorb all of the information that they have to offer you. And that can be legal nurses who have been in the field for 30 years, like yourself, or also somebody who's just starting out. There's definitely a benefit to numbers, right? The more people you reach out to, the more information you'll get, and you can use it to your benefit. Nurses love to share information with each other. So when somebody reaches out to a nurse and says, hey, I need help with this, would you be willing to give me some information? Or how did you get into this? They are more than willing, for the most part, to give you as much information as they can, and even lock arms with you and say, let's do this. This is what I'm going to do. Follow me. That's the best information I can give. And then also seeking out, there's a ton of free webinars out there. AALNC has a ton of free ones. There's also some that you can purchase that are very inexpensive. You really don't have to spend a lot of money to get your business going. If you want to, you certainly can. There's plenty of opportunities for that as well. But read books. There's so many things out there. You just have to look for it. And then when you find it, dig in and be intentional with it. You have to do it every single day, especially when you're starting out. So with that, I think the way I look at it is that you have to stick and stay. That's always my motto, stick and stay. stick to it, stay with it, and you will reap the benefits at the end. It's kind of like planting flowers. You plant your seeds, you have to come back to it and keep attending to them. You keep watering them, and eventually it's going to flourish. And that you really have to look at your business like that.
Thank you, Amy. You're inspiring.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that.
How can our listeners connect with you and get more information about you?
So my website, there's a way that they can email me through the website, and also call my phone or send me a text. My website is www.globalnurseconsulting.com. Or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And my LinkedIn is linkedin.com/company/Global Nurse Consulting.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah. Thank you,
I
Pat.
appreciate that. And thank you to you who's been spending the last half an hour or so learning more about Amy, learning about the technique of using LinkedIn in a very deliberate way to connect with attorneys, to share information that they want, and to build your business. And thank you to you who's been spending the last 30 minutes or so listening to Amy as Amy and I chat about using LinkedIn in a deliberate way to connect with attorneys, to share expertise, to use hashtags strategically, and to follow up. You're planting seeds, as Amy described them, and you're waiting for them to flourish, but they need attention and care and watering in the meantime before they bloom and give you the benefit of your hard work. Thanks so much. This is Pat Iyer and Michelle Gaines, who is a nurse anesthesiologist. We have been chatting in our podcast on a whole range of subjects. Michelle, what were some of the key topics that we covered in your show?
Pat, today we went over off-use medication in anesthesia. Also, we discussed how anesthesia providers do all kinds of polypharmacy and manipulation of the side effects of medications to get effects on other medications, how it can be very confusing if people haven't worked with an anesthesia provider to untangle why we use the medicines when we do and how we use them. And then I think we got off topic and talked some about fentanyl and about abuse and how narcotic abuse and other substance abuse is rampant, I'm afraid, in the anesthesia world, mostly because of availability.
Yes, we did cover that subject and the implications for the legal nurse consultant who is working on a case where the provider may have been impaired at the time of delivering anesthesia and how that affected judgment, decision-making, and tragically, sometimes the patient's outcome. Be sure to catch Michelle Gaines' podcast on the off-label use of medications as well as substance abuse among anesthesia providers.